Welcome to this Brit Mums Learning Zoom all about Google Search Console. We're delighted to have with us Karis Parker of Rainy Day Mom and also the Blog Surgery. Welcome, Karis.
Hi.
For those of y'all who don't know, Karis is a professional blogger, a former digital media teacher, and a geek at heart. She runs the Blog Surgery, which advises bloggers and influencers on how to efficiently use SEO to grow. She's also founder of the award-winning site Rainy Day Mom, which I mentioned earlier, so do go check that out, especially great for home learning and lots of fun activities to do as a family. Now, Brit Mums and Karis, we've teamed up on our Brit Mums Learning site right now to offer the mini masterclass, which is about doing SEO in the small pockets of time you have from as little as 5 minutes a day. That's now on for a special price of $9.99, so check it out. Here today, we have a free session, and this is about Google Search Console, something that every influencer and small business needs to know about. So without further ado, Karis, take it away.
Okay, so first of all, we all know and we've all been told that we need to have Search Console and we need to submit our sitemaps because that's how Google crawls us. So everybody that I speak to that's been blogging for a month or a couple of months has got it set up, but that's it. It's left and people never touch it again. So today I'm going to show you how this free tool is probably the most powerful tool that you can use to grow your blog organically. So first thing, okay.
I just going to share here with the group a link to a post on the Blog Surgery on how to submit your sitemap. So if you don't know how to do that, there is some free advice on Karis's site, the Blog Surgery. So that's in the chat.
So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to go through, and I've got 3 Search Consoles up to show you and guide you, because I've got 3 sites, 2 that are brand new that you won't have heard me talk about and things, because I've got sites at different stages where I test the SEO before teaching it. So when you first submit a sitemap for a new site, you're bound to see something like this. And this is the sitemap's been there since the site started in January. It's a brand new site, and we can see the performance is up and down. And this is what I see with a lot of new sites or sites that have never focused on SEO majorly when they start there. When you're first there, the first thing you want to do is check that Google hasn't given you a manual action or you have any security risks at all. For older sites, this is a possibility and might explain why you're not getting any traffic. For newer sites that have just submitted a sitemap, it's something that it's worth checking and sorting out immediately, and it can be done easily. So down the side, you've got your the different options, and there's a section security and manual actions that you open. You click on the manual actions, and what you want to see is no issues detected, and the security issues, no issues detected. If you have any issues, it will give you reasons for them. When you get the reasons, it's worth then speaking to somebody that's familiar with it. So Jen has shared like my Facebook group, and in there, just pop in a question or email, and we can look at what sort of problems you might have and how to fix them. It's generally because Google thinks that you should have no follow attributes onto sponsored posts and you haven't been putting them, in which case there are simple fixes that you can do while you sort it out manually. So that's the most important thing that you need to check when you first go on. Then it's to look at some of the other problems. Now, as I said, I've got 3 sites. So I've got here, which is Hey Mum, What's Cooking, which is a recipe site. I've got Travelled So Far, which is a travel site. And then we've got Rainy Day Mum, which is the site that Jen was talking about. Rainy Day Mum has been going since 2011. It does have, as you can see, with the errors and things, but as you can also see, they're not something that I'm tackling and actively pursuing because they are things that aren't going to affect my SEO. It's where redirects have been put in place and things are churning over and working through. You'll also see new data But again, that is things that it's not essential to focus on at the moment. It's to focus on and improve for 2021. So it's time to improve. And I will be covering areas like that in what the masterclass that Jen and Brit Mums and myself are developing as well. Is there any questions about any of that, Jen, that's come through so far?
None that come through. How do we know when we look at these errors if they're serious or not? Will give us an indication.
So if I look at my coverage and I open the report and I look at the errors minus server errors, which are generally the 500s, and that means it's a host problem. It's coming up that it can't get to the database. It might be that I've had, while I've been using the site, it's stopped working and slowed down because of the amount of people on it. Quite often that happens if you're on a lower hosting package and you get a post that does well all of a sudden. So there they would appear as 500 errors. These ones, because I've been working on changing my theme and my how my site looks and using the customization, for some reason it's not doing a redirect and people are on the site at the same time and they've pinned it. So that's producing an error as well. Those links still work, so it's just a Google glitch.
Okay, great, thanks. So
on here, the two most important things that we want to look at are the performance tables. So the performance tables give us the most amount of information. They give us everything from where we rank on Google search to what words people are putting in and how many people are seeing those words. This isn't the keyword trends and data that you get from things like Ahref and SEMrush. This is real data. Now, SEMrush and Ahref and all of those keyword finder things give some indication. They give the trends. They aren't looking at the trends for your site, and they aren't looking at how Google sees your site. What every person and blogger and small business owner needs to understand is that as you write, Google almost gets a profile of what it expects your site to be like. It knows, for example, on Hey Mum, What's Cooking? If I suddenly write a post about, for example, a stroller review on the site that I've been sharing recipes on since January, then that is not going to rank, even though my keyword finder tool has said to me that it's got a low keyword difficulty, it's going to be easy to rank for, and thousands of people are looking for that things. Because Google has categorized my site as being about this, there's no way that it's going to rank something that I write that's out of the way. So instead, all of my research about keywords, unless it's a brand new topic on my niche, and my niche for Hey Mum, What's Cooking is food, traveled so far is travel. Rainy Day Mum has got recipes, education, kids crafts, and parenting. So it's a bit more of a family, a bit broader, but I know that certain things are never going to rank very well on those sites because that's not where Google puts me, in a bubble. With where it puts you in a bubble, those keyword trends and numbers that you see have actually got no relation to what people are putting in exactly, because Google gives those trends, and they are trends, and it's general things, they're not specific, whereas there are some really specific things that Google can rank your site for and that people are searching for but are never going to make it into those tools because they're not in their frame of looking at. Whereas using Search Console, you can actually find the exact phrases that people put in to the search and where Google is then putting your site into that position and where how many people are looking at it. So does that make sense? Is there any questions about that?
I think that's good.
Okay, so when you look at performance, you're looking at the type of search, and this is a web search. You can also look at image, a video, and news. Most sites are only going to be web and image. If you have video on your site that's not necessarily YouTube embedded videos, then that would appear there as well. You've got your date range. As soon as data starts collecting, once you've submitted your site maps, that date range then allows you to do things like look at it over a custom amount of time, up to the last 16 months, yesterday, 7 days, 28 days, 3 months, 12 months, etc. But it also allows you to compare. And compare is really important because you may feel like your SEO efforts aren't really doing anything. But if you compare to, for example, the last 3 months to the previous 3 months, you can see where your efforts have improved. If I do the 3 months to 3 months, so here we go. Just by looking at the numbers, an extra 20 clicks, but an extra 10,000 impressions. So even though this new site isn't getting very many clicks, the impressions are going up because Google is seeing that I'm writing more about it consistently and it's showing to more people. It also shows the average click-through rate and the average position. If I go back to where it was before. You can then also filter. So the new button allows you to filter by the query, and the query is the exact words that people put in. You can sort it by a specific thing. So I could put in breakfast, or I could put in bread and things, and then it would bring up all queries that contain that word or that word phrase. By the page, you can also then look at the country and the device and the searching periods. But mainly, I focus on query and page because query is what people type in and the page are all the pages on your site that Google has indexed. At the top here, you have the clicks. This is literally the clicks from Google to your site. You've got the impressions. That's how many times your site has been shown in a search query. It's not in a search query anywhere. It's in a search query when somebody has looked at that page. So if somebody only looks at the first page and your site is on page 4, then you won't register that. If somebody has looked at your site and they have gone to page 4, they will have seen it and that will register there. So if you have 4,000 people looking at you on page 4, you know it's a really good query. If it doesn't match exactly what you were typing and writing about on that post, then that's what I call a golden moment. That's something that you can write now and Google thinks that that's what you write about, so it's going to work. And you will rank quicker for that than if you look at the density of a keyword for something else. The average click-through rate is literally your total clicks divided by your impressions. The more impressions you have with the same amount of clicks, the lower your average click-through rate is. As your impressions increase, your average click-through rate will decrease. Over time, that impressions will stabilize, your clicks will go up, and your average click-through rate improves. If you're looking for quick wins, anything that is below your average click-through rate is something that you can look at improving. If you want to see it in more detail, you click on it, and then it appears on the graph and appears in the columns below. The average position is literally the average position in the rankings. So 1 to 10 appears on the first page, 11 to 20 on the second page, etc. It's an average position because it works out your average position based on what it's showing. So one day or 1 hour, you could appear on page 1. The next day you could appear on next impression, you could be on page 100. So an average position for that search would be 50 because it's halfway between. So that is very movable and it changes. Again, if you want to look at improving, you focus on things that are moving up 1, or you can improve from 30 to 20. It is much easier to move from a lower position, a higher position, then try and focus on those positions on 10 to 1. So focusing, trying to improve positions 40 to page 33, to the 30s to page 2 is easier than trying to get something onto that first page from the second page. The graph here shows the movement. So clicks, for a new site, I would be expecting to see up and down, clicks on no days, clicks on some days. If you look at it over the last 12 months, so this will give all of the data for this site, you can see it was no clicks at all, and then it started to increase, and the number of clicks per day is increasing, as well as how often there are no days. For a site that's more established, you expect to have data that shows a steady rise as you focus on improving your SEO. You also expect to see trends. Very, very few sites are stable all year round. So a site that focuses on, for example, this travel would tend to improve at various times during the season. Unfortunately, due to lockdown, and we can see on a travel site exactly when lockdown happened, it took a shock to that sort of system, but there has been gradual improvement since. So you can sort of see the trends. For a well-established site, and this one's been going since 2011, you can see the trends even more obviously, and it will go up and down in seasonality, and you can see where things like efforts about Easter activities that I did here really influence and help the traffic and SEO.
So this is really a way to, you can both analyze what you've been doing over time and also get a sense of how your traffic ebbs and flows overall.
Yes, I often get asked, why is this post dropped in rankings? Usually it's not because of it's actually dropped, it's because people aren't searching for that over the whole of the year. When you look at, for example, if you are using one of the keyword finder tools or something and you look at New Year's Eve crafts, by just looking at their data, it's virtually not really worth doing anything with New Year's Eve, because the volume is so small, because it takes it as an average per month. So you might not get anything New Year's Eve until December, in which case then it's worth doing. But you won't know that unless you have the data here that you can look at, and you can see how it influences and how it affects your traffic. Below, so I'm back on Hey Mum, What's Cooking? We've looked at the graphs and you can see how that's working. You can see the spikes, and you can see the rise in impressions and things. Below that is the most important data that you're ever going to get, and that is unique to your site. There is no point you taking what works for my site and hoping that your site is going to do it instantly. If your site is similar, then your data will reflect a similar sort of pattern and similar sort of things. But unless you're doing the SEO behind it, and unless you're doing plans and editorial calendars that are going to influence what you're writing and how Google sees it, then you can't take what you see on somebody else's search console and assume that you're going to get the same results on your own sites. So this is completely unique to you and to what you write about and to your efforts. When you first look, it's ordered by clicks, and you're on the query. So the queries, again, is the exact words that somebody types into Google to then be shown your site. You will see there spelling mistakes, you'll see variations of English and American spellings, you'll see even foreign versions of your most popular posts. You might have something in Arabic, or you might have something in Chinese. They will all show as well. So whatever your site is being shown, the exact wording and phrase and how it's typed is going to be shown there. There'll be some that are very formal, and they will come from voice searches. So for example, when somebody speaks into their mobile phone and uses the Google search on there, that will then be transferred to a very formal phrasing that you'll notice in there.
Karis, we have a quick question from Coral asking, how does Google search find you if you have your blog on your main website as opposed to having a separate blog name? So like a business site, but with an element that's a blog.
So if your blog is on a subdomain of your main site, so say your business is there and you have a subdomain blog, then you need to submit your subdomain blog as well. So for example, Rainy Day Mum is the blog, but I also have Store Rainy Day Mum, which is my shop version of it. So I have two properties, one, and this is two properties because it's a subdomain, one that is my Rainy Day Mum and the other that is my store, that is the business product selling phase of it. Both of those have to be submitted to Search Console, and then you switch between the properties and you'll be able to see the same data of what people are putting in as what you would expect to see for your own blog and site.
Yeah, so Coral, you can use that link I shared earlier from the blog surgery about how to submit a sitemap, and you do that for the subdomain one as well.
If the blog is just on your website and is just a folder, then in your sitemap, it should be able to submit it. So your sitemaps, when you submit, will appear here, and you might have page sitemap, post sitemap, blog sitemap, categories and things like that. So they will all be submitted and Google will be crawling them. The more you interlink between your business and your blog, if possible, the better, because then Google will be crawling your blog from your main business site as well. So back to here and these queries. So queries again were the exact phrases that people are typing in. You then are automatically showed the number of clicks. So the number of clicks is how many times people have clicked from a Google page onto your site. The impressions are how many times your site has been shown to people in that query, using that exact phrase. Your average click-through rate you can switch on to show, and then the average position. You can then sort by clicking on the clicks from the most clicks on a page down to the least clicks on the page. Same with the expressions, click-through rate, and position. Position is one that I like to look at because there is, as I said, a golden opportunities where if something's very, very high up in the positions and getting lots of impressions, it means people are having to go through lots and lots of pages on Google to find what they're after. If you have clicks and it's down on page 10 or 11, then that's something that people are getting or think they're getting your answer for, and it's worth using that data to write more about. It will then give all the positions. So 164 is on page 16, 17 of Google. So it's a new post and it's come up there. Down at the bottom, you've got rows per page. It only goes to 5,000, to 1,000, unless you export the data. As soon as you export the data, you get a bit more information as well. And you can export the data up at the top here with the big export button, and it will export everything that's shown there. If you have, for example, a lower position and you've got lots and lots of views, so Breakfast Ideas for Kids is on page 40 and there's 589 people looking at it, that's where you know that 589 people have gone to page 4 of Google to look for Breakfast Ideas for Kids, and they're clicking on page 4. So it's something that is worth pursuing for your site, as Google thinks you're writing about it, it's showing about it to people looking at it, and you can then continue to write about more Breakfast Ideas for Kids over and over again, and Google will start to rank you for Breakfast Ideas for Kids.
So Karis, just to clarify, so that that ranking spot, you basically move the decimal point over 1 because there are 10 results per Google search pages.
Yes, there's 10 results per Google search page. It's also an average, so some of them might be on the page before and some of them might be on the page afterwards. You might have Google, for example, and you can see what Google's doing with the position. So if you isolate that query by clicking on it, it will then show you what Google's doing for that query. So for a while, it was at position 1, and then Google decided to put it at position 74. So I know that it's something that Google thought I was doing really well at. It trialed it for a while, wasn't getting very many clicks on it. So what it's done is it's decided to lower my ranking. However, it still thinks I'm ranking fairly well for it, and people are still looking at it and searching for that every single day. Does that make sense?
Yes. Does that necessarily mean you've done something wrong?
No, it just means that Google tried it in position 1, because remember, this is a very new site. So new sites, Google will attempt to see what people think of it and new posts on your site. So they might put you on page 1 for a little while. They might put you in position 1 for a little while. However, when people aren't clicking on it because the results further down are better than yours, it will then lower. But it does have the knowledge that you were on page 1 before, and if you start to improve, the jump will be more drastic than the drop. And in actual fact, it's getting more clicks on a lower page than it got on the higher page.
Great, thanks.
If I show the same example, but look at the travel site, which has been going for a lot longer, we can see, for example, pyramids in Mexico. So pyramids in Mexico is appearing on page 2, where it's towards page 3, more accurately. However, if you look at the pattern, it's going up and down. This post has been on the site for a while, so it fluctuates, but if people click on it, then the ranking improves a bit.
Yes, and to be fair, while it's fluctuating up and down, the overall trend line is up.
Yes. So this is why I think it's one of the most powerful tools, because if the trend line's down and there is no seasonal reasons for it, then you know that you need to focus and work on improving the SEO. And that's where doing the 5, the 10 minute, the 15 minute and the hour tasks that we've put into the mini masterclass can really help. An example of how they can help is by looking through to the Rainy Day Mum site and looking at this spike here. So this spike here is where I implemented exactly the procedures that we've put together and actions in the mini masterclass on 2 posts, because it was the beginning of lockdown. I had both of my children home educating them and distance learning. I could only fit in 5 or 10 minute tasks at a time, so I did the minimum amount, but I did it to the right things, the things that were starting to improve but weren't improving as much as they could improve, and that had the real effect of getting those impressions up, and why it worked, because I was looking at, instead of looking at what trends and what keywords were saying that I should be able to rank for, I actually used what Google was telling me I could do and work on.
Right. So yes, it's really powerful, and that is why we put together the mini masterclass, that you don't have to do everything all the time to see some benefits. It's about being quite surgical and emphasizing what you're doing well. Yeah. I have a quick question from Alex Grace. So does that mean if I was ranking position 1 for a travel post, but then due to COVID, the views dropped, I'm now going to be bumped from position 1, page 1?
No, because that's another thing, like seasonality, like Christmas and Halloween, Google's going to still do exactly the same thing. You will have not got the impressions because people aren't searching for it. As soon as people start searching for it, unless there are higher quality posts and more people writing about those topics where you were ranking 1, then you're not going to drop. The thing that you have to keep doing is you have to keep writing consistently about the content that's doing well. about the themes or the topics that are doing well. And by consistently, that's not meaning that you have to publish every single day or every single week. It just means your content plan that you have has to have content going out as regularly as you can manage. So if you can only post 4 times a month, then you need to make sure that that's consistently 4 times a month until you can fit more time in. It's when you do 3 weeks of posting every single day and then you have a 3-week break with nothing going out that Google will then start upping and lowering your rankings because you're not being consistent with what you are doing. And the more consistent you are, so if you only publish on a Tuesday, then Google will learn that on a Tuesday it has to crawl your site again because you'll have new content. If you can republish on a Thursday and write a new content on a Tuesday, so you're only doing 1 post a week and then updating another post, then Google's going to crawl your site on both those days because it will see from your site maps that you've submitted to Search Console that that's when the main updates are going on.
So, and when you mean republish, that's going into old posts, updating them, optimizing them with language, and making sure your formatting's right. Some of those things we cover in the mini masterclass.
Yeah, and once you've done that, you then use the inspect at the top. So you've updated a post. We go to the site and pick a post that we can demonstrate on. So you take the post, you inspect it, and it will then sort of, you can request Google to crawl it. So if you published on the Tuesday and updated a post on Thursday, on that Thursday, you go into your Search Console and you can inspect it, and it will tell you what Google thought about it previously, and then you can request it again. So this is an ideal one because it's got some warning signs, which for the new bloggers and for bloggers that are worried about how it's going to affect SEO, that can be a real problem. They look at it and it's like, what do you do? Well, for a start, they are warnings. They're not errors. So a warning is something that Google is desirable. It's not something that Google is requiring. When it's desirable, it's an advantage to have it in. It might be that there are 2 posts that are very similar, yours and somebody else's. If that other person has all the bits that are desirable, then that other person's post is going to rank slightly ahead of yours. So if you can fix those warnings, then it's an advantage, but it's not something to worry about and it's not something to focus exclusively on. When there, you can see that it's submitted and indexed. It will tell you when it was last crawled. So as I said, I publish on a Tuesday on this site. It was crawled just before Tuesday because it wasn't a new post. It was successful. It tells me what it is, where it is. It's in the sitemap. And then if I've made any changes, I can request indexing. So I press it, indexing. It will then look at it, crawl it, and re-index it into the rankings because I might have changed something. So I might have fixed one of these warnings below. And then it will put it into the priority crawl set that it looks at, the bots go and explore.
Excellent. So, Karis, I have a follow-up question from Coral regarding, we were talking about submitting the sitemap. She's a bit confused. I have my main website. I've got a blog tab in the menu. So each time I write a blog, I would have to submit that blog to the Google search sitemap. That's a no.
No. Once you've submitted your sitemap, and literally your sitemap will then show every post on your site. I'm trying to get up an example so that you can see. Let's see if I can copy and paste this across. So a sitemap literally lists every single post on your site. The more posts you have, it might split into 2 or 3 sitemaps. Each of those then has the post, the image number, and then when it was published or updated. So that date will change to the latest date of when the post was touched by you on the site. Once it's there and Google's got it into their search console, you don't have to submit any post that you write because it's going to be crawled by Google. If after a week you inspect it because you've not got any traffic or it's not being seen, or you try and Google that exact post total and it's not there, then it's worth using that inspect at the top just to get Google to crawl it. New sites particularly, and sites that have got very old content on them, sometimes those old posts will have dropped off because they weren't very good and you've updated it and Google might not have got there yet. So then inspecting it is worth doing.
Great.
Okay. So we're back here. We're switching over to the other site because there is something that's really good to see in your search console. So when you're on the homepage, there is also the possibility of having Discover. Now, Discover is just where Google has featured you into either the mobile or into the desktop real box at the top, and it's discovered your site and it's showing to more people. When you have that, it then helps to increase your rankings. You can't influence getting into there, but you can look at what it's got you there for and then use that to help you plan more things to write about. So when you click there, it literally tells you the page, the post that it is, and the country that it's seen in. So for some reason, my Holmesley, which is the New Forest campsite with kids and dogs, is being shown on the Discover in the United States. So I'm now looking at what aspect of that post is Google then going to, why is it picked to show it in the United States, and why are people clicking on it as well? So if I take the end of it, so the post title part of the URL, head to the normal search results and put it into a page, we're now isolating that page in things, and it will show me what things people are typing in to find out about the post. And the higher up the position is, the more likely those are the terms that people are looking for, that it will have put in Discover for. So I think it's probably this one here, which is camping with a greyhound or camping with a dog, because the other ones are specific to the UK.
Fabulous.
The next thing that is really important is switching from your queries to where Google shows you your pages. So you can see your impressions for that page and the number of clicks, the click-through rate, and the position in search. You're then able to isolate those pages and then look at what people are typing in to see them. If you look at the queries, these are the things that people are typing in to find the post. If I want to improve where I rank for that position without doing any outside backlinking or anything, anytime I link to this post on my site, I want to use the best impressions, keywords that I can. So that's a handy tip for using on your own site. If I'm planning to work on posts, I want to look at posts that are below my average click-through rate. So anything that is below, on this site, 0.9 would be ones that I want to update. And that's exactly what I did for that Easter for Rainy Day Mum. I found an Easter post that was below the average click-through rate, and I made the updates that we've covered in the mini masterclass. Inspected it, and then it went, as I would expect, much better, because I focused on something that Google was already saying, this is something that's there, but it could be improved.
So when you say below the average click-through rate, does that mean 0.8
Yep. So if I look through the clicks, the one that I would be doing would be this one, the fun things to do with kids on a rainy day in London.
Gotcha.
Like literally, and then snorkeling with kids, what gear should you get? So those would be the two posts that I might choose to work on in August, because I don't have any time with two kids at home to actually do anything else but those two. Okay. Is there any questions about anything else that you see in Search Console that has come up that it would be useful to cover in the next sort of 5-6 minutes?
Why don't you quickly run through, so we've submitted our site post, we're clicking in. Is the best thing to come to it with, for example, an idea of like, oh, this post does well, I want to see how it does better? Or is it better to come in here and say, ooh, I need to find a post that's underperforming that I can quickly make do better?
So if you've got minimal time, you find that post that is underperforming and you see what you can do better. If you are planning what you can write in the future, that's when you can use this to do your keyword research. Because remember, Google sees this as your site. It's got this picture of what you write about. It's got a picture of what people can find on your site. And even if you're down, it's showing you on page 10, it will give you some data about that if people are going that far. So I might be planning what I'm going to write about in August for this site. So I'm seeing that the highest things are to do with breakfast and kids. Instead of going, okay, I'm going to write more easy breakfast ideas for kids, I want to find a more specific, because when a site is new, or if you're trying to rank for something new, if you can write the more specific the post, the better. You don't immediately rank for how to climb Mont Blanc if you've not wrote about the climbing gear and everything like that in beforehand. You want to write for potty training, there's no point writing the ultimate guide to potty training if you've not talked about everything that goes before that and all the bits. So the books that you've read to train your toddler to potty train or other bits like that. If you're a craft blogger that focuses on shadow boxes, you need to talk about the little bits and then some different shadow boxes before you write a guide to how to do it all completely. So if I'm going to do breakfast, I'm going to search specifically for any query that contains breakfast. And this will then give me all of the terms that Google has shown my site for that I can then use to work on. I don't want to work on things that I'm already doing fairly well on. So again, I do the position swap, and I'll be writing things like breakfast ideas for toddlers, healthy breakfast ideas, fun breakfast ideas, delicious breakfast ideas. There might be some specific types of breakfast. So for example, here we've got waffle. So I might write some waffle recipe ideas. I might do a lazy morning breakfast. So when you've got a bit more time, what you can do, might write a Sunday breakfast recipe or things to cook at home for breakfast. So it gives me all those possibilities to use in the titles of posts and the type of posts. If it was waffles, it might give me more ideas. So I do the same query, and instead of putting breakfast, I put in waffles. It will then give me fun ideas, and I'll be able to again go to the bottom positions, and there we go, a waffle and ice cream sandwich. So I know that I'm going to write a recipe for a waffle and ice cream sandwich.
Breakfast of champions.
I did. It's a chocolate waffle and ice cream sandwich. But it's that idea that you use the data that Google's giving you. You can do it that way, or
Okay,
for
so,
example...
Karis, let me just stop you. So to do it that way, the trail we follow, we get into Google Search Console, and then you're going to performance.
Performance, and then you press on the new, and you put query, and you put in the shortest variation of your word. So instead of waffles, it's actually better to miss off the plural and just put waffle in, because people might have, for example, put fun waffle recipe instead of fun waffles recipe.
Gotcha.
That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to take something that is doing well. So this is on the travel site, and we're looking at that Mayan pyramids to climb in Mexico. And then go back from your pages to your queries and put in your position. And then I can see what else people are looking for. So pyramid videos for kids. It is lockdown. That would be one that would work to grow while a travel site isn't growing, for example. So I could find some people's videos on YouTube and write a post of the best Mexico pyramid videos for kids to watch while on lockdown or something.
Great. We have a quick couple of questions. One from Vicki Wilton. What are core web vitals? Obviously, we're not going to be covering that today, but it'd be good to know.
I can quickly mention them. So core web vitals are basically what Google is looking to put in 2021. And they've put on, in 2021, it's going to be used in the algorithm. They are to do with how fast your site appears to a user and how much your site moves around as a user looks on it. So if your site does not have ads on, it's something that you should be able to get your page speed up really quickly by looking at your host. So you ensure that your host is the best that you can afford. All hosts, if you approach them and say, hey, I've just done a Google speed test and it says that it's a server-side problem, and say to them, this is what it's saying, they are able to help you. I know that there are some that are like GoDaddy and Bluehost. They are willing to help, as well as more like the Lyrical Host and more expensive ones like WP Engine as well. If you have ads, then one of the things is your page speed is always going to be slightly slower, because it takes a while for all those scripts for the ads to come onto it. If you can look at your page speed without the ads on, you can work on the bits that are going to influence your page speed afterwards. But the core web vitals are looking at your, I don't have data, so core web vitals are looking at the CLS, which is content. It's basically where how quickly the things appear and go onto a site, and then the LCP is how quickly everything finalizes. CLS is the shift in objects. So if you've got ads, your site is going to shift as your ads change, because some ads are bigger and some ads are smaller. And from AdSense, all of the ad networks will display a rotation of ads on your pages. So sometimes things are big and sometimes they're small. And if your site loads and then the ads come on afterwards, everything on that page is going to shift position. So I would expect a site that has got ads on to have a CLS issue. The LCP issue is how long it takes to go from a blank screen to having a content that people can read on it.
Great. So that's a little bit more technical, but really good to know. I've got two additional questions. One is from Anna Miller. So we were talking about going in and putting in a query, and she asks, and so these will be your keywords?
Yes. So you can select a set of keywords, because a post should never just have one keyword. You don't want to keep repeating, for example, pyramids in Mexico every time. I want to be using pyramids in Mexico and then any other of the phrases that will talk about pyramids in Mexico. So Mayan ruins, the names of some of the pyramids, Mexico pyramids, pyramids in Mexico. And I'd use a combination of those different words throughout, because they're all things that people search for. I don't just want a post to only rank for pyramids in Mexico. I want it to rank for all of the other things. And then when I interlink it on my site, I'll also use the best of those terms to go and link to that post.
Yes, good. So expand.
5 is a good number.
5. Jot that down, everyone. I've got a further question about sitemap. Benita says she's created her Google Search Console, brand new, and says my homepage is not in my sitemap when I inspect the page. Is that normal?
For a new site, yes, it will be there though, because your Google is looking at your site all the time, and each and every single page on your site goes back to your homepage. So the way that Google crawls, it doesn't look at a picture of your site, it looks at the code, and the first link on your page is normally your header image, which on WordPress sites anyhow, you click on it and it will go back to your site. So the link on there that Google sends the little robot spiders through is automatically your homepage. So it crawls it every time it indexes a new post on your site anyhow.
So we've gotten a really great kind of overview of how Search Console works and the ways that we can kind of efficiently go in and use it. Karis, we're coming up to our last couple minutes here. Are there other things that we should know, either, focusing in or pulling back in terms of our understanding of Google Search Console with our blogs or sites?
Okay. If you want to see what Google is actually displaying your post for, don't ever look at how your post ranks in a query in like your normal Google Chrome window. Always go incognito. So you go incognito or secret and put in those phrases. Don't expect on any specific day that you look, it's going to appear at the ranking that it says it is. Because remember, it's an average ranking. We're looking at the last 3 months. You can look at the last day. And even then, it is still an average ranking. And it's an average ranking because even during a day and across everybody that clicks on writes in that search term, they are going to see it at different places in the search, depending on what Google knows about them. And Google knows about how your site performs in a certain country or even in a region in a country, and the language you're using and things like that. So you go incognito and you'll get more information. There are a couple of tools that are really handy that will give you an idea. So I do all of my work in Chrome because Chrome I can link through my website and bring up a box that shows my Search Console results and how it's affecting in the last 7 days for the searches that I would want to rank for. So if I went onto Google now and I put in pyramids in Mexico or Mayan pyramids, I would hope that it would bring up my traveled so far box and it would say I've been improving in the last 7 days. There's another tool that you can get, and I'll have to dig out the name for it because I can't remember what it is. Yes, I can. It's called Serp Trends. So Serp Trends, when you Google, it will give each place, each position a number, and then as you look at that same search another day, it will show how they've moved up and down, as long as you haven't cleared your cookies between looking.
Great. So I've shared some links in the chat of how to browse incognito. It's really easy to find if you do a search online of how to do that with whatever browser or device you're on. But that can be really informative. So Karis, this has been a really information-packed session here today. I know we've been had some great participation too from folks, some great questions. Any final words to leave us with?
Don't just submit your sitemaps and never look at Search Console again. Even if you only go and see what that top queries are, so you can see if they change and alternate or how your graph is doing, get familiar with looking at that performance. And if you are doing it for the first time, please check your manual actions, because that could explain why you're not getting any traffic from Google if you've been blogging for years and years and years. Normally, you would get a message if your sitemap has been submitted before, but if not, it's worth knowing.
Great. And yes, so we will be posting this on the britmoms.learning site, britmoms.learning.com site. As a reminder, you can go get easy SEO tasks to be done in little slots of time. I mean, what Karis was talking about, where she got some posts up just at the beginning of lockdown and they suddenly started performing amazingly. 5, 15, 30 minutes, an hour, and really move the needle with existing content too. So this doesn't mean you're creating lots of new content.
No, it's all, the mini masterclass is all based on what you already have, because that is your biggest resource. You can, unless every single post on your blog is at position 1, there is always room for movement and improvement. So those sort of tasks are simple to do, they're easy, and you can do them in minutes. You don't need any special technical skills, you don't need any special equipment. It's literally things that you can sit there and do while you boil the kettle, for example.
Exactly. So you can find that on britmoms.learning.com. That's
learning.britmoms.com.
Oh, learning.britmoms.com. Yes, I'm getting ahead of myself. And that's on for a special price right now, $9.99. We're going to have the masterclass coming soon, so keep an eye out for that and more of Karis's excellent advice. And in the meantime, thank you to everyone for coming. Thank you, Karis, for the session, and we'll see you at the next BritMoms Learning Zoom. Bye.
Bye.